The sound of a hammer echoed against the pine-lined ridge as Jack worked on the porch of his cabin. Sawdust drifted in the late afternoon sunlight, a quiet reward after months of hard labor. To him, this cabin wasn't just a structure, it was freedom. A place untouched by the petty rules and suffocating demands of city life. But peace has enemies. The crunch of gravel under tires snapped him out of his rhythm. A black SUV crept up the unpaved drive, too polished for these mountain roads. The door slammed, and out stepped Karen, perfectly pressed blazer, clipboard in hand, lips curled in permanent disapproval. She marched like she owned the land beneath her feet. "Mr. Walker," she called, voice sharp enough to cut lumber. "You've ignored our notices. Your dues are 3 months late, and your exterior modifications are non-compliant with HOA standards." Jack leaned on his hammer, wiping sweat from his brow. He wasn't surprised. Karen had already cornered him twice at the local market, shoving letters in his hand. "Karen," he said calmly, "I've told you before, I'm not in your HOA. My property line ends before your community begins. You have no authority here." Her eyes narrowed, a predator scenting weakness. "Everyone in this valley falls under the jurisdiction of Timber Ridge HOA. Don't play smart. I'll be adding fines to your account daily. And if you don't comply, further action will be taken." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "You're wasting paper. This land was never annexed into your subdivision. You can't find me." That was when her face reddened, blotches of rage blooming across her skin. She pulled out her phone with a dramatic swipe. "Oh, we'll see about that. I'm calling the police." Within minutes, the still air was broken again by sirens. A patrol car rolled in, lights flashing, tires scattering dust across the yard. 2 officers stepped out, exchanging wary glances between Jack's tools and Karen's furious stance. "Officers!" Karen rushed toward them as if they were her personal bodyguards. "This man is violating HOA codes, refusing to pay, and illegally constructing on property governed by our association." Jack met the officers with steady eyes, pulling a folder from his workbench. He had been expecting this. "Here are my deed papers. Here's the county zoning map. And here's a letter from the planning office confirming my property is outside Timber Ridge HOA boundaries." The younger officer flipped through the documents, eyebrows rising. The older one nodded. "Ma'am, he's right. This property isn't under your HOA's jurisdiction." Karen froze, stunned that her certainty was unraveling in front of her. That can't be. He's lying. He forged those papers." The older officer's patience thinned. "Unless you can prove otherwise, ma'am, we can't intervene." Jack folded his arms. "Told you. I'm not in your HOA." Karen's glare could have ignited dry timber. Without another word, she stormed to her SUV, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. As she sped off down the gravel road, Jack returned to his porch, but the silence that followed didn't bring peace. It brought a warning. Because Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, Jack found an envelope nailed to the wooden post at the end of his driveway. The paper was official-looking, stamped with the Timber Ridge HOA seal in bold blue ink. Across the top, in block letters, it read, "Final notice of violation." Jack tore it open. "Failure to comply with Timber Ridge HOA regulations will result in immediate fines, property liens, and legal seizure. You are hereby ordered to cease construction until architectural approval is granted. Noncompliance may result in towing of vehicles, revocation of utilities, and police enforcement." At the bottom was Karen's aggressive signature, swirling like a dagger. Jack laughed under his breath. The document was impressive to anyone who didn't know the law, but to him, it looked like theater. No county seal. No legal jurisdiction. Just paper, intimidation dressed up in bold fonts. But intimidation had power. By afternoon, 2 neighbors, an elderly couple who owned a cabin deeper in the woods, stopped by. They looked uneasy. The husband cleared his throat. "Jack, we saw the notice. Be careful. Karen's been difficult. She's fined people for the smallest things. Grass too long. Fence paint too bright. Folks usually give in just to keep her quiet. Jack nodded, but the warning settled heavy in his chest. Karen wasn't just harassing him, she ruled these hills by fear. That evening, as the sun dipped below the ridge, headlights appeared again on his gravel drive. It wasn't the police this time. It was Karen, flanked by 2 HOA board members, clipboard soldiers in pressed polos, holding more papers. She strode forward, lips tight, eyes gleaming. "Jack, you think you're clever with your little deeds and maps. But we have records showing your parcel was included in the Timber Ridge annexation of 2011. She thrust a document forward. Jack took it, scanning the lines. At first glance, it looked real. County headers. Parcel numbers. But something didn't add up. The map was blurry, the stamp a pixelated smear, and the legal description didn't match his deed. "This is a forgery," Jack said flatly, tossing it back. Karen's smirk widened, as though she expected his defiance. "We'll see what a judge thinks when we place a lien on your property. Maybe you'll think differently once the sheriff shows up with an order." Her board members shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. They were her shadows, not her allies. Jack stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Try it. Every fraudulent claim you file is evidence. You think you're the law, Karen, but you're just paper and noise." Her face reddened again, rage pulsing just beneath the surface. "Mark my words, Walker. This isn't over." The SUV doors slammed one by one, and the convoy retreated down the winding road. The forest swallowed the sound, but the echo of her words lingered like smoke after a fire. Jack stood alone in the fading light, the forged document still in his hand. He realized something chilling: Karen wasn't bluffing. She was escalating. And if she could manufacture paperwork this easily, the next battle wouldn't just be annoying. It would be dangerous. The following week felt like a campaign of war. Not with bullets or bombs, but with papers, calls, and intimidation. Every morning, Jack discovered a new envelope stuck under his cabin door or taped to his truck windshield. Each one louder than the last: immediate action required. Cease and desist. Notice of fine, $500. By the 5th day, the stack on his kitchen table was thick enough to rival a law textbook. But it wasn't just paper anymore. One evening, Jack returned from a supply run to find a bright orange sticker plastered across his pickup: "Vehicle subject TO towing, HOA enforcement." His heart thudded in disbelief. The truck wasn't parked on a neighborhood street. It was on his private driveway, 30 feet from his porch. As if on cue, a tow truck growled up the road, headlights sweeping across the cabin walls. A heavy man stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Evenin'. Here to tow this vehicle. HOA orders." Jack blocked his path, voice hard. "You touch this truck, and it's trespassing. This isn't HOA property." The driver frowned, confused, flipping through his paperwork. "Says right here, Timber Ridge HOA, vehicle violation." Jack held up his deed. "Look closer. My land is not Timber Ridge. If you hook that chain, I'll have the sheriff here in 10 minutes, and you'll be explaining why you're stealing private property." The driver hesitated. His eyes darted from Jack's steady glare to the dense forest road behind him. Finally, he muttered, "Not worth the trouble," and climbed back into the cab. The tow truck reversed, taillights disappearing into the night. Jack exhaled slowly. He had won that battle. But he knew who had sent the truck. Karen. The next morning, she arrived herself, this time with 2 uniformed officers. Her SUV door slammed, and she pointed at Jack's half-built porch like she was commanding troops. "There! Unapproved construction. Unsafe, unsanctioned. I want it stopped immediately." The officers approached, but their body language told Jack they weren't eager participants. One of them sighed. "Sir, we've had multiple complaints from the Timber Ridge HOA. They claim this structure violates community building codes. Jack handed them his folder, the same documents he had shown before. Deed. County map. Official letter. I'm not in their HOA. Their codes don't apply here. The younger officer skimmed the papers and shook his head. Ma'am, looks legitimate. His property is outside your jurisdiction. Karen's voice rose, shrill with fury. You're just going to let him break the rules? This is unacceptable. Our community will not tolerate this. The older officer gave her a tired look. Ma'am, unless you can provide real legal evidence, there's nothing we can do. Jack folded his arms. I told you once, Karen, I'm not in your HOA. Stop trespassing. Her glare was pure venom. She jabbed a finger toward him. Enjoy your little victory, Walker. You won't be laughing when the liens start stacking up. You'll lose this cabin, one way or another. She stormed off, dragging the officers behind her like unwilling bodyguards. Jack watched her SUV vanish down the road, the echo of her threat burning in his ears. For the first time, he felt a flicker of unease. Karen wasn't giving up. She was escalating, and escalation meant she was desperate enough to make mistakes. And mistakes could be dangerous, for both of them. After weeks of harassment, Jack realized something important: reacting wasn't enough. If he kept waiting for Karen's next move, she would control the pace of this war. He needed to turn the tables. So, one rainy afternoon, he drove into town and walked into the county records office. Rows of filing cabinets and computer terminals hummed quietly under fluorescent lights. The clerk, an older man with silver hair, looked up from his desk. Help you find something? Jack leaned on the counter. I'm looking into the Timber Ridge HOA, specifically their president, Karen Walters. Public filings, budgets, liens. Anything on record. The clerk raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Instead, he guided Jack to a terminal and pointed at the search bar. Everything's in here. Public record. Just takes patience. For 3 hours, Jack combed through financial statements, annual reports, and scanned PDFs of board minutes. Most of it was routine: lists of landscaping expenses, maintenance contracts, dues collection. But then he saw it. A discrepancy. In 2019, Timber Ridge HOA reported $250,000 in reserve funds. By the following year, that number had dropped to just $30,000. Yet there were no matching expenses, no repairs, no large projects, no emergencies. The money hadn't been spent. It had simply vanished. Jack's eyes narrowed. Either Karen was grossly incompetent, or someone was siphoning funds. He printed the reports, slipped them into a manila folder, and kept digging. That's when he found the second anomaly: dozens of liens filed against homeowners, many of them overturned later in court. The pattern was clear: Karen weaponized liens as a threat, knowing most people couldn't afford to fight back. But one note stood out. A cabin owner named M. Harris had contested a lien in court and won. In the margins of the scanned document was a handwritten note from the county clerk: evidence of HOA forgery, see case file 22-416. Forgery. The same trick Karen had tried with Jack. Jack sat back, adrenaline rising. This wasn't just neighborhood politics. This was corruption, maybe even embezzlement. And if the numbers were right, Timber Ridge HOA was sitting on a mountain of debt. As he gathered the documents, the clerk returned, wiping his glasses. Find what you needed? Jack slid the papers into his folder. More than I expected. On the drive back to the cabin, the rain poured harder, blurring the windshield, but his mind was clear. Karen wasn't some petty busybody playing neighborhood cop. She was running an empire built on intimidation and fraud. And empires like that had cracks. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the rain had stopped. Jack stepped out of the truck, folder under his arm, and looked toward the distant ridge where Karen's SUV often prowled. For the first time since this started, he wasn't just defending his cabin. He was preparing for offense. If Karen wanted a war, she'd get one, but this time, Jack wouldn't just be the target. He'd be the hunter. Jack spent the next few days in quiet preparation. Every evening, he spread the county documents across his dining table like puzzle pieces. Missing funds, forged liens, fraudulent filings, the picture of Karen's empire was becoming clearer. But he still lacked one thing, proof that tied Karen directly to the corruption. Late one night, as Jack sat staring at the papers, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Walker? A low, cautious voice came through. If you want to bring Karen down, stop digging in the county office. You're looking in the wrong place. Jack straightened in his chair. Who is this? Let's just say, someone who's tired of living under her thumb. I used to be on the board. I know things. And I've seen what happens when people get too close. You don't want to end up like Harris. Jack's pulse quickened. The name Harris was in the forged lien case he'd found. What happened to him? A long pause. Then, almost a whisper, Karen ruined him. She spread rumors, tanked his credit with bogus liens, even called his employer. He lost everything. Moved out of state. But he kept his records. If you can find him, you'll have what you need. Jack jotted notes on a yellow pad. Why are you telling me this? Because she's slipping. She's drowning in debt. If the homeowners find out how deep the hole is, she's finished. But she won't go quietly. She'll take anyone down to keep control, including you. Before Jack could press further, the line went dead. He stared at his phone, mind racing. An anonymous whistleblower. A disgraced homeowner with records. Karen's web of power was unraveling faster than he thought. The next morning, Jack took a calculated risk. He went into town again, this time not to the county office, but to a quiet diner by the highway, the kind of place where secrets traded hands over burnt coffee. Sliding into a booth, he spread his documents casually, hoping someone might notice. Sure enough, within minutes, a man in his 60s limped past his table, slowed, then doubled back. His eyes darted to the papers. You're looking into Timber Ridge, aren't you? Jack met his gaze. Depends who's asking. The man pulled out the seat opposite him. Name's Harris. I heard you've been stirring the hornet's nest. Jack's chest tightened. Fate had just walked through the door. Harris set down a battered briefcase and clicked it open. Inside were neatly stacked folders, receipts, and letters. I kept everything. Every notice, every forged signature, every fake fine they tried to bury me under. Karen thinks she won, but I still have the truth. Jack leaned forward, his voice steady. Then maybe it's time we use it. For the first time, he saw a spark of hope in Harris's tired eyes. And for the first time, Jack realized he wasn't fighting alone. Jack left the diner with Harris's briefcase strapped into his passenger seat like precious cargo. Inside was the smoking gun, documents proving Karen's forgery, her bogus fines, and a pattern of harassment that stretched back years. But Harris had also revealed something else. Timber Ridge HOA wasn't just corrupt. It was broke. They'd been borrowing against future dues for years, Harris had explained over coffee. Karen keeps homeowners scared so they'll pay up without question. But between lawsuits, unpaid bills, and her skimming, the HOA owes more than it has. It's a sinking ship. Jack had asked the obvious question. Who do they owe? Harris's smile had been bitter. Banks. Private lenders. Even the landscaping company. If someone bought up that debt, they'd own the HOA. The thought had gnawed at Jack all night. He didn't want to be in the HOA. He never asked to play their games. But what if the only way to end Karen's reign was to take away her throne? The next morning, Jack put on the one suit he still owned and drove into the city. He sat across from a weary loan officer at First Regional Bank, folder of research in hand. I'm here about Timber Ridge HOA, Jack said evenly. The banker adjusted his glasses. They're not in the best financial standing. Why do you ask? Because I want to buy their debt. The man blinked, then laughed like it was a joke. When Jack didn't laugh back, his smile faded. You're serious? Jack slid Harris's documents across the desk. Serious as it gets. You sell me what they owe you, I'll take the risk. You clean your books, I get the leverage. Everybody wins. The banker scanned the pages, whistled low. You do realize, if you buy this debt, you're responsible for collecting it? Jack leaned forward. That's the idea. After hours of negotiation and a mountain of signatures, it was done. By sundown, Jack wasn't just a cabin owner on the edge of Timber Ridge. He was the holder of their biggest loans. On the drive back, the weight of it settled in. He hadn't planned on becoming part of this fight. He just wanted peace. But now, he had the power to do something no homeowner had ever done before, control the HOA from the outside. That evening, Jack poured himself a stiff drink and stared out over the valley where Karen's house lights flickered like a watchtower. Tomorrow, she'd probably call the cops again. Or send another forged letter. Maybe even tow his truck. But tomorrow, when she played her game, Jack would finally be holding the winning card. And soon, she'd find out that the man she tried to bully wasn't just not in her HOA. He was her new landlord. Karen wasn't used to losing. For years, she had run Timber Ridge HOA like a queen with an iron crown. If someone pushed back, she buried them under fines, rumors, or legal threats until they either complied or left. So when her usual tricks stopped working on Jack, her frustration turned into obsession. The morning after Jack finalized the debt purchase, he woke to the sound of metal chains clanking outside. Pulling back the curtains, he saw a tow truck backing toward his pickup. Karen stood in the driveway, arms crossed, barking orders like a drill sergeant. This vehicle is in violation of Timber Ridge parking policy, she announced smugly as Jack stepped outside. Jack folded his arms. I've told you before, I'm not part of your HOA. You have no jurisdiction here. Karen smirked, waving a clipboard. Oh, but according to our revised map, this property falls under Timber Ridge boundaries. That means your car is mine to tow. Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled a folder from under his arm, the bank's signed documents. Actually, Karen, I think you'll want to take a closer look at this before you embarrass yourself further. Her eyes flickered across the pages, but instead of showing fear, she doubled down. Forgery. Lies. Do you really think a piece of paper will stop me? She snapped her fingers at the driver. Hook it up. The tow truck operator hesitated, glancing between Jack's calm stare and Karen's fuming face. Finally, he muttered, Sorry, lady, this doesn't look right, and drove off, leaving Karen sputtering in his dust. That only made her more dangerous. By evening, Karen had mobilized her army of loyal board members. They marched door to door, warning neighbors that Jack was a squatter, an agitator, even a criminal hiding from the law. Flyers appeared on mailboxes with his face printed like a wanted poster. But for the first time, the neighborhood didn't entirely believe her. Whispers began to spread. Why is she so obsessed with that cabin guy? Didn't the cops already clear him? Maybe she's hiding something. Karen sensed her grip slipping and grew more reckless. She called emergency meetings, demanded special assessments, even tried to raise dues overnight to cover the debt she didn't know was already in Jack's hands. Jack watched it all unfold with steady patience. Every desperate move she made only dug her hole deeper. Then, one night, his phone buzzed again, another anonymous message. Just 3 words this time. She's panicking. Soon. Jack set the phone down and leaned back, a small smile tugging at his lips. Karen thought she was striking back. But really, she was striking herself. And soon, when the truth came out, she'd realized she hadn't been fighting a stubborn neighbor at all. She'd been fighting her landlord. The Timber Ridge clubhouse had never been this crowded. Folding chairs filled the room, neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder, whispering nervously. Karen stood at the front with her board members lined up like soldiers. A giant banner behind her read, "Special HOA meeting, Community Safety and Compliance." Karen slammed her gavel down, silencing the chatter. Her smile was tight, brittle around the edges. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We have a serious problem in our neighborhood. An outsider has invaded Timber Ridge. A man who refuses to follow our rules, refuses to pay dues, and has threatened our way of life. Tonight, we take action." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned toward Jack, sitting calmly in the back row, arms crossed. He didn't rise to her bait. Karen continued, waving a thick folder in the air. "This so-called cabin owner is a danger. I've already contacted law enforcement. I propose we levy a $10,000 fine against him immediately and initiate foreclosure proceedings on his property." Murmurs of uncertainty spread. One older resident raised his hand timidly. "But, is his property even in Timber Ridge? I thought the county map." Karen cut him off with a glare sharp enough to slice steel. "The map was updated. I updated it myself. We decide who belongs here, not the county." This time, the room didn't cheer. A few people looked down, others exchanged doubtful glances. That was Jack's cue. He stood, slow and deliberate, walking to the front with a leather folder in hand. The crowd hushed, sensing something about to happen. "Karen," Jack said evenly, "I've been patient. I've tolerated the harassment, the forged letters, the fake fines. But tonight," he opened the folder and laid several documents on the table. "Tonight, it ends." Karen sneered. "More of your fake paperwork? Pathetic." Jack turned to the crowd. "These are bank contracts. Timber Ridge HOA is nearly $500,000 in debt. Past due loans, unpaid contractors, legal fees, all thanks to mismanagement. And as of last week, I purchased those debts." A stunned silence fell over the room. Someone whispered, "He owns our debt?" Jack nodded. "That's right. Every dollar this HOA owes, it's owed to me now. Which means the person Karen has been calling a squatter, a criminal, and an outsider," he paused, locking eyes with her, "is actually her landlord." The room erupted. Gasps, laughter, even a few cheers. Karen's face drained of color, then flushed beet red. You liar. This is fraud. He's tricking all of you," she shrieked, but her voice cracked. Jack calmly tapped the papers. "The contracts are real. Signed by your lenders. Verified by the county clerk. You can all request copies." He let the weight of it sink in before finishing, "Karen doesn't run Timber Ridge anymore. I do." For the first time, Karen's power cracked. Her neighbors, once cowed by fear, looked at her with something new in their eyes, disgust. And for the first time, they looked at Jack with respect. The queen had been dethroned. The clubhouse was buzzing long after the meeting ended. Neighbors huddled in groups, whispering, pointing at Karen, who sat frozen in her chair like a statue about to crack. Her board members, once loyal lieutenants, quietly slid their papers into folders and slipped out the back, leaving her alone. For the first time, Karen wasn't the one in control. Jack stayed calm, letting the noise settle. He knew the weight of what he'd just dropped on the community. Owning Timber Ridge's debt gave him leverage, but it also made him the target of every anxious stare in the room. Finally, a tall man with graying hair, one of the longtime residents, stepped forward. "So, what does this mean for us?" His voice was cautious, almost hopeful. Jack faced the crowd. "It means the HOA doesn't control you anymore, at least not the way Karen ran it. The debts that were strangling this community are in my hands now. I didn't buy them to punish you. I bought them to stop her." He glanced at Karen, who glared back like she wanted to set him on fire. Gasps of relief spread through the room. A woman spoke up. "Does that mean no more surprise fines?" No more bogus fines, Jack corrected. If something is truly unsafe, we'll deal with it. But the days of weaponized rules are over. Applause broke out. For the first time, neighbors smiled at Jack, nodding, even clapping him on the back. The man who had once been branded an outsider was suddenly the center of trust. Karen shot to her feet, slamming her palms on the table. You fools! He's manipulating you. He doesn't care about Timber Ridge, he just wants power. That's what this is all about. Jack didn't flinch. No, Karen. Power was your game. All I ever wanted was to live in peace. You couldn't allow that. You tried to find me, shame me, even call the cops on me for no reason. And now, because of your obsession, you've lost everything. Her lip trembled. For a split second, the room saw not a queen, but a desperate woman watching her empire collapse. But Jack wasn't finished. He pulled one last paper from his folder and laid it on the table. Effective immediately, Karen is removed from the Timber Ridge Board. Not by vote. By contract. As your creditor, I now hold the right to restructure leadership. And believe me, it's time. The neighbors erupted again, this time louder. Someone shouted, about time. Another added, finally, some real justice. Karen's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. None came. Her once loyal followers looked away, ashamed, unwilling to meet her gaze. Jack spoke one last time, his voice steady, this community deserves better. And starting now, that's exactly what it's going to get. Karen stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. But the sound wasn't power anymore, it was defeat. And for Timber Ridge, it was the sound of a new beginning. The night after the HOA meeting, Timber Ridge felt different. For years, the air had been thick with Karen's presence, her letters, her threats, her rules that changed on a whim. Now, for the first time, the neighborhood breathed freely. Jack sat on the porch of his cabin, sipping coffee, watching the glow of porch lights twinkle across the ridge. The quiet felt earned, not borrowed. But peace was never simple. The next morning, an envelope appeared in Jack's mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, county records showing something Karen had hidden all along. The HOA's land charter, filed decades ago, contained a loophole. If the community's debt reached a certain threshold, the property titles of board members' homes could be seized as collateral. Karen hadn't just lost power. She had put her own house on the line. Jack leaned back, whistling low. So that's why she fought so hard, he muttered. All her bluster, all her obsession with control, it hadn't just been ego. It had been fear of losing everything. By the following week, word had spread. Karen's house, the largest on Timber Ridge, the one she bragged about during every meeting, was now legally tied to the debt Jack owned. At the next informal gathering, a neighbor asked cautiously, so, what happens to her? Jack looked around the room. People expected revenge. They expected him to throw Karen out, to humiliate her the way she had humiliated so many others. Instead, he surprised them. Nothing happens to her. Not unless she makes it happen. I'm not here to play Karen's game. Her house is technically in my hands, yes, but I don't want it. What I want is for Timber Ridge to stop living in fear. There was a long silence. Then, one by one, neighbors nodded. Relief filled their faces. For once, the rules weren't written to punish, they were written to heal. That night, Karen showed up at Jack's cabin. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red. She didn't look like the iron-fisted queen of the HOA. She looked like someone beaten down by her own war. You could take everything from me, she whispered. Jack studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. I don't need your house, Karen. But if you ever harass me, or anyone else here, again, I won't hesitate. Consider this your last warning. For once, she had no comeback. She turned and walked away, her shoulders heavy, her empire reduced to rubble. Weeks later, Timber Ridge felt like a different place. Kids played in yards without being scolded. Neighbors waved instead of glaring. The fear was gone. Jack remained the reluctant landlord of their debt, but to the community, he was something more, the man who broke the reign of the HOA tyrant. And though Karen still lived there, her voice was no longer the loudest. The final twist? The woman who once claimed ownership of everyone's lives now lived in a house that wasn't even truly hers. And every time she looked at Jack, she knew it.